Welcome to lesson 5, my little exploration of Indian rhythms on iDrum. Now, this next lesson involves counting gaps. It's kind of something that you don't really hear talked about that often, but within the context of Indian rhythm, it's an incredibly useful thing, and of course then that spills over onto being incredibly useful, outside of the idiom. I'm going to start by playing a track that comes specifically out of a composition derived simply from counting gaps. It's a track that I wrote for Mark Schulman, which has been called by Mark Pete Locked It. Whatever, it's all good, all part of the bigger picture. So this track, again, based on gaps. So as I mentioned, that track was based on a composition derived from counting gaps. You know, it may seem like an unimportant thing, but it's one of the most important things that I learned from my studies of Indian drumming and percussion. The idea of counting gaps with phrases. So let's take one of the gaps within that tune, which is 5 notes long. Now, if you've got a quarter note pulse here and you have to speak a rhythm which is 5/16 long, but with only one note in it, it would sound like this: ta, 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 ta. So one of the keys to this type of gap is having a set of syllables that you speak in your mind like grace notes. So one is playing that pattern, but in your mind you're thinking ta 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 ta, but you're only playing ta 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 ta. So all the different gaps have a kind of set of syllables that represent them, and it makes compositions with series of gaps and different gap structures much easier to articulate. I mean, it's something that I find very useful in the studio. Sometimes you'll get a piece of music or a chart and there's a couple of awkward hits or a couple of things that you kind of have really got to like focus on, or you're thrown, you hear it in a different place. And sometimes using this system of counting gaps can really get you out of that problem. So, you know, a gap of 3 will be ta, guitar, 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 ta, ta, ta. You're just playing the ta, but you're in your mind you're thinking ta, guitar, guitar, gut. And 4, ta, ta, ta. 5, as I said, ta, ta, ta. 6 can be either 3 and 3 or 2, 2, 2. Ta, 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 ta. Now, depending on certain compositions, whether you do the 3 plus 3 or the 2, 2, 2, sometimes it's easier to do the straighter one. Sometimes it's easier to do the 3 plus 3. 7, ta, 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 and so on. So let's look at this piece now. So the actual structure is clearly written in the notes. Let's look at the A section. So the A section starts with a simple 3/8. Ta, ta, tum. with a gap at the end. So it's 6/8 notes long. But then we have a gap of 5, a gap of 4, and a gap of 3. Ta, ta, tum, ta, guitar, tum, guitar. Which with quarter notes, ta, ta, tum, ta, guitar, tum, guitar. And then we have a gap of 5, and then 4, and then 5. So it kind of makes up 4/4. It's all in 4/4, the whole track. So we have, as the notation, ta, ta, tum, ta, guitar, tum, guitar, ta, tum, tum, guitar, ta, tum. And what I've done with this track is divide these syllables between snare beats and bass drum beats. So we get a rhythm that sounds a little bit like this. Well, in fact, it sounds exactly like this. Ta, tum, ta, ta, tum, ta, ta, tum, tum, ta, ta, tum. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5 1. So that's the A section. The B section is very similar. We just swap the N section, which is the 5/4/5, before the 5/4/3. So we have the ta, ta, tum, the 3/8 section, followed by 5/4/5, followed by 5/4/3. So we have ta, ta, tum, ta, ta, tum, tum, ta, ta, tum, ta, ta, tum. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 1, which will be like this. So you can see it's quite an interesting sort of structure. I mean, I tend to play with the hi-hat playing the offbeat accents for this groove. So you can immediately see, again, it's another way of creating something different, moving away from a standard backbeat type approach to a groove. And again, it's not necessarily something that you would want to do the whole way through a track, but you know, maybe that there's a passage where you might want to play some different accents. The other thing that it's very useful for is composition. If you're going to be getting into composing or coming up with different ideas within the band structure, or you know, thinking of new ways of writing material, then this is a very useful tool and device to have. Pretty much the rest of the piece is divided with the same type of gaps. We have again the 3/8 section plus 5 5 5 5 5 5. Which isn't in 4/4. And then finally, we have a similar sort of construction, but we are doing, adding a section which is making it into like a T-high, which we mentioned before is a phrase repeated 3 times, calculated so as to end on the first beat of the time cycle or groove or whatever. So we have the same section as the section I've just played you, but we add on the top of it in that manner. So there we can see an abbreviated version of the whole of the main section of the track. Now there's another section which happens a little while later, and it's kind of a longer version of a T-high, and it involves different phrases repeated 3 times. And again, counting the gap is really important in this situation. There's actually a lot about this in my book, Indian Rhythms for the Drum Set. And there's a track on there called Counting the Gap, where the whole thing is devoted specifically to different ways of counting the gaps. But this pattern that we go to, that I play on the toms, now basically that comprises of 3 groups of 5 and a gap, 3 groups of 6 and a gap, 3 groups of 7 and the downbeat. So the groups of 5, da 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 dum da da dum da da dum da da di da dum da di da dum da di da dum da da di da dum da di da dum da di da dum da. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 da. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1. So that's the structure of it. The 5-beat phrase, da dit da kita dum. Left right left right left right. The 6-beat phrase, da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum. And the 7-beat phrase, da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum. So the whole thing. Now the gap is important here because the gap is 5. So again, when we come to the gap, remember at the beginning, the gap counting with the extra syllables is ta, aga, ta, aga. And you're only playing the ta, aga, ta, aga, ta, aga. So we're having that in our mind, we're thinking that when it comes to the gap. Da-dit-da-kita-dum, 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 da. Da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum, da. Da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum, da-di, da-kita-dum, da. So really important actually, and particularly when you have to have something where something might be thrown off beat, even if it's one of the even gaps. Like for example, sometimes people say to me, well, what's the point of learning, 4, ta, ta, I mean, it's, what's the point? But if that comes after, say for example, some 5s, say you've got 3 groups of 5, da, 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 ga, da, ga, da, da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da. So with quarter notes, ta, 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 ga, ta, 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 ga, ta, 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 ga, ta, 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 ta. It's an easy way of kind of keeping that gap. So when it's thrown off beat, the actual having the ability to count gaps with syllables, even if it's an even or an easier group to count, is very useful. So that's the structure of the piece. As I say, that's a piece I wrote for Mark Schulman, and is on his DVD, which is a DVD on recording drums and writing arrangements and how to follow charts and stuff like that. It's a very interesting DVD, definitely worth checking out. As I say, there's lots more material in my book, Indian Rhythms for the Drum Set, and I'm sure I'll be back to give you some more information on the drum set. Next time we're going to be looking at a hand drum, the Kanjira, which you've seen before in some of the previous issues of iDrum. So look forward to seeing you then, and happy Easter. Is it Easter now? I don't know. Whatever. See you later.